The Drive with Tim Donnelly here on 99.9 The Fan. Joining us in studio today, Mike Glennon, NC State legend, 10-year NFL veteran, friend of the show. You know him by now. Mike, before we get into State, who's playing tomorrow against Western Carolina to open their season, we've been talking a lot, and today is a big day for the Panthers with that first waiver claim. We've been talking a lot about cut-down day in the NFL. We've been talking a lot about guys that will or won't make the team. Will they get brought back on the practice squad? Will they get brought back after someone goes on IR? The other thing you talk about on cut-down day is kind of the emotions of it, right? It seems like every time you get excited, you're like, oh, gosh, they kept this guy. There's somebody on Twitter or somebody on TV going, this day isn't fun for the players. Their dreams are being shattered. Which is true. Sometimes I don't, a little buzzkill-ish, but can you take us through kind of cut down day from the player's perspective, having seen it from a bunch of different angles?
Yeah, every team tries to do it the best way they can, and I feel like some teams I was part of did it better than the others. I don't think there's a good way to go about it because, I mean, it is the toughest day in the NFL just because guys' dreams are getting crushed and you put in all this work, and it's tough. It's definitely the most somber mood in the locker room because you literally see guys getting grabbed by the Grim Reaper, who's just taking them. And
I saw Belichick calls him Billy Bad News. Yeah. He said early in his career he had to be Billy Bad News.
And then they end up with a trash bag, and they're just cleaning out their locker. I mean, it's tough to see, and I think the reality is a lot of the guys know they're on the bubble, but there's still that hope that maybe. And then there's also a little bit of optimism that it's like, well, they told me I'm going to be on practice squad if I clear waivers. So, some guys, it's the end of the journey for them at that team. Other guys, they may get signed back to the practice squad, and a lot of times they end up getting bumped up throughout the year. But it is definitely a tough day. Luckily, I was never part of, or actually I was once with the Jaguars of the draft day cut down day, and my agent kind of let me know the night before that it was coming. But it's not fun. And but it's part of the business. I mean, you get into it knowing you're at 90 and you're getting down to 53. I mean, that's a lot of guys that are going to be cut.
Do you ever get numb to it? Because, I mean, as you mentioned, 90 to 53, it's a lot of names. And if you're seeing it every year, and so often it's the big dramatic grab your trash bag, leave, and then you're back like 2 days later with the practice squad. Are you calloused over, or is every single cut down day that brutal as some make it out to be?
I would say definitely the most shocking was the first your rookie year, seeing it happen. And numb wouldn't probably be the complete right term, but you get more numb.
Hardened over like a crab apple.
It's like you just start getting used to it and knowing it's coming. And there's always kind of the couple guys, like the true bubble guys. Are they going to keep him or what? And typically as a quarterback, you're talking about the receiver room. That's you're typically keeping maybe six guys, and it's who are those 5 and 6, who's number 5 and 6 going to be, because the top 3 or 4 are pretty set in stone, and you hate it to see it when one of your guys that you're hoping make it gets that call into the GM's office.
I've been tracking the Panthers roster pretty closely, and I do think, like, as a quarterback, like looking at the Panthers, they cut Terrace Marshall Jr., second rounder, but he's been playing the receiver part pretty well this camp, which different coaches, maybe it fit better, whatever. David Moore ends up making the team, and it appears largely because, like, he's better on special teams. Terrace Marshall Jr., they didn't trust on a single special team. I don't know if he, never learned to tackle or whatever, but for whatever reason. I have to imagine as a quarterback, you're going like, forget special teams. Keep the guys that make plays downfield. We'll find someone to run down there on punt.
Well, but that's all part of the conversation. Yeah. Like, who do you think we're going to keep? Well, it's like, well, Terrace isn't on, he's not on the special teams. Yeah. And I see, what's the guy's name that made it?
David Moore.
I see he's going with the one. His name's listed with the ones on the special teams. He's probably going to make it then. And again, that's why some people make a living out of being a special teams ace. I mean, you look at Matthew Slater with the Patriots. I think he played 15 plus years being that special teams guy, and that's probably an extreme example. But as a quarterback, you want the best receivers, but that special teams matters, and those special teams coaches are going to go to bat for that player that's good on teams.
Mike Glennon joining us here in studio on The Drive. One more before we get to State opening against Western Carolina tomorrow. I'm fascinated by this. For 10 years, I've been firm, if you draft a quarterback in the top 3, play him, right? And if your team isn't very good and he struggles, if that like breaks him mentally, then he was never going to make it in the NFL anyway, because at a certain point, every quarterback is going to be tested to the extremes mentally. After watching Bryce Young last year and now seeing the Drake May debate, I would say I'm like 95% still where I was, but I'm wavering. The Drake May versus Jacoby Brissett. Again, try to exclude UNC versus NC State in this conversation. The Pats' offensive line looks rough. Their wide receivers, dare I say, last year's Panther-like. Am I wrong for just saying you play Drake, he's playing well, he looked better in the preseason, even if it feels a bit like you're sacrificing him to the defensive line gods who are going to be making that offensive line look pretty bad?
Yeah, I'm torn too. I'm with you. I'm adamant on if you draft a guy that high, play him because he needs the reps, and if he's that good, then he's going to find his way out of a bad situation. And people always love bringing up Patrick Mahomes and how he waited and Aaron Rodgers, how he waited. I am very confident that if they started day one, they would have been just as good as they became. It is interesting watching this Patriots offense. Yep. I believe I heard Gerard Mayo say the other day, our starting left tackle and guard may not be on our roster right now.
Because they have the 3rd waiver priority.
And that's concerning. I mean, if you don't even think that your current starting tackle and guard are good enough that a guy that is cut by another team may become your starter.
And there's 2 offensive line needy teams ahead of you on waiver priority in the Panthers and Washington. So you're saying your starters might be cut by another team, passed up by 2 offensive line needy teams, and then fall to you, and you're like, sweet, put them in the lineup.
Right. So, and it feels like they kind of had this whole plan all along was to bring Jacoby in free agency. They hadn't drafted Drake yet, but they probably had a pretty good idea. We're going to take a quarterback. I feel like it's a little different than the Panthers last year. Panthers traded up, and they weren't the bottom of the barrel team in the league where they probably thought they had a decent chance to compete. Obviously wasn't the case, where I feel like New England's going into this year knowing we're not going to be very good. So let's take our time. And I'm, as what I just said, that I don't typically like it. I actually think I kind of like letting Jacoby play. And to start out their season, it is not an easy start. They play Bengals, good defense, Seahawks, Jets, great defense, 49ers, great defense, and then go down to the Dolphins. And then I think there's a bye shortly after that. So then it's like maybe that's the point where let Drake see it from the sidelines for a little bit and then pass over him the reins.
That's exactly where I am, where it's like play Drake, and then you're like, but this is if I had any belief that maybe you should sit a top pick, the needle is threaded kind of perfectly in all situations for this to be the one.
And I think you saw on Hard Knocks where Nick Saban was talking with Eberflus about Caleb Williams and how the number one thing that kills is expectations. And this is seeing the schedule, seeing the kind of surrounding cast. It could be a recipe for a guy to his self-doubt to start creeping in if it doesn't go well.
We have just a couple more minutes here to talk State Carolina Thursday night. By the way, Pack Therapy Podcast, myself, Mike, we host it. If you want way more in-depth coverage of the Western Carolina opener for State, check that out. It'll be available everywhere podcasts can be found, YouTube, all of the places. What are we talking here? 30-point win, 40-point win, right? Give us the game one expectations.
Yeah, I think it should be that. I know the line set around in the 30s there, but I think this offense is going to come out, and honestly, I don't expect there to be a bunch of bumps in the road. I think it's going to be a smooth transition from moving from the quarterbacks last year to Grayson McCall and these new kind of playmakers from the transfer portal stepping right in. So I think the offense is gonna look really good. My question is, how's the defense going to look, and how are they going to look without Peyton Wilson? I still expect the scheme to be the same, but it's kind of how does it look without that guy, that number 11, the ferocious running around the field? Do they have guys that can fill the void more as a collective unit than one particular player?
I don't want to make this segment where you stop by kind of once a week and we talk about radios and helmets. because we talked last week about Dave Canales and Bryce Young having to get that play calling relationship down. College now has radios and helmets. Is Grayson McCall going to be hearing voices?
That is one thing I'm looking to see is in the college game, they rely so much on the signals, and it's more the receivers where it takes time for the coach to call in the quarterback and then the quarterback to signal. I kind of expect, and I'm curious to see, are the receivers going to continue getting the signals from the sidelines and just let the quarterback communicate to the offensive line and the running back? Or maybe everyone looks over besides the quarterback and just he doesn't have to waste his time. So I am curious to see, are we still going to see those goofy poster boards hanging up and all the guys, the coaches wearing all the different colors signaling in?
If you have a freshman quarterback, I think it's going to become 30 seconds of like coaching in his ears while everyone else gets to play from the sideline the way they always have, because offensive coordinators love to be in the ear of those young guys. Obviously, Grayson McCall's older than Bryce Young, so he's probably not going to get the young guy treatment. Mike, we appreciate you as always. Check out the Pack Therapy podcast everywhere podcasts can be found, and we'll be paying attention tomorrow when State takes on Western Carolina to open their season. Back after this with more.